Yes, sir. So I'll follow up with exactly what happened with that incident. CAL FIRE instructed our department, along with Manning PD, to leave gate number 6 open, unlocked. Every gate has a Knox box, which only CAL FIRE and AMR has access to. That Knox box is activated through a special key that they only have. Once that key is turned, that gate and arm will remain open. It is out of our control, it is out of the community's control until they give us the go-ahead, and they'll personally come out themselves and unlock that Knox box. During that week, the fire needed to be at 100% containment. It was at 98% throughout the entire week. They still had fire personnel up in the mountain, as you mentioned, and that was their only point of access. With that being said, I did have an officer monitoring through our CCTV system at the main gate in our dispatch center. So we were frequently monitoring. We did have a lot of concerned residents, which we appreciate the calls. That tells us that you guys are obviously reporting stuff to us right away. But we were monitoring that gate, sir. Thankfully, 0 incidents were reported to us during that week on Breckenridge regarding any issues at gate number 6. Again, if it's not reported to us, we don't know about it, folks. This is why I encourage people to report stuff right away. But yes, sir, we were highly aware and monitored it. It was at the end of the week that actually CAL FIRE came back. They said, yes, we're good to go. We're at 100%. We will send our personnel out there to make sure that the Knox box is properly secured at that point.
Thank you for the response.
Of course.
This is a little bit off the subject, but it's coming up, the mosquito abatement. People are here, and I want you to pay really close attention because Drew Lowry, a resident of the community, has been in a coma from Nile virus in Monterey, no. Yeah, in the hospital for 14 days, unconscious. He's in really bad shape.
So thank you for that, sir. We wish him well. Just a little FYI, to avoid mosquitoes, as anybody knows, standing water, that's just a target where mosquitoes breed ultimately. If you have any standing water around your premises, dump it. It's just, you're asking for mosquitoes to be laid around that area, and just avoid it. It's a health reason, as he mentioned, so we want to make sure everybody's up to par with that, okay? Thank you for your time, folks.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so now we're going to have vector control, and it is Andrea Merrill and Dakota Halford. So I ask you to please wait and ask your questions after the fact, and make sure you have the microphone, because it's being on channel 97 and they can't hear you if you don't have the microphone. So Andrea?
Thank you for having us here. Thank you for having us here. Do we have a clicker for the... My name's Andrea Merrill, and I'm an environmental health technician for the County of Riverside, and I work in vector control, and I've been working here for 20 years. My coworker is Dakota Halford, and he came with me today. So let's jump into what a vector is. It's an organism that can transmit a pathogen to a human from an animal. It can be a mosquito, a fly, a flea, a tick, or a rodent. We tend to concentrate on mosquitoes in our work in Riverside County. We have 3 vector control agencies in Riverside County. We have the Northwest Mosquito and Vector Control in the west. They are in Corona, and they cover Corona, Riverside area. We have Coachella Mosquito Control to the east. They cover the desert area. Riverside County Environmental Health covers the blue area on my slide. We go from Moreno Valley down to Temecula, all the way out to Cabazon, Awanga, Anza, Banning, Beaumont, Idlewild. There are 5 of us technicians who cover those areas. We also go out to Blythe, and we cover the unincorporated part of Blythe. We do fogging, we do mosquito control out there. Riverside County Vector Control has been in operation since 1972, and we strive to prevent new vectors and protect public health through surveillance and control. We do mosquito control. We have a free mosquito fish program that I'm going to talk about at the end of my presentation. We have a lab surveillance program. We have limited insect identification. We have several people who worked in private pest control before they came to work with us, so they can identify some pests that you might have in your house or your yard. We do educational presentations, and that's to bring our services to people to let them know what we do, and to have you guys help us to identify mosquito breeding sources so that we can abate mosquitoes. We have a limited bee removal service that we will remove beehives and bee swarms if they're in a public right-of-way. We also do disease monitoring. We do West Nile virus, Zika, chikungunya, dengue, yellow fever, Lyme disease, hantavirus, and plague. So mosquitoes are the most dangerous animals on the planet. We have about 3,500 species worldwide of mosquitoes. 53 of them occur in California and 19 of them here in Riverside County. We have some mosquito species that are not vectors, but they're still nuisances. So the ones that are really, that we're concerned mostly about here in Riverside County is Culex tarsalis. It's the western encephalitis mosquito. It can carry West Nile virus. They tend to breed in sources of water that are clear and clean, and we tend to find those in pools, swimming pools that have gone green that people don't maintain. We have Culex erythrothorax, which is also known as the Thule mosquito. They grow in retention basins, places where they have the tall grasses and cattails, and those are a nuisance mosquito. Anopheles mosquitoes can carry malaria, which we don't have malaria locally transmitted here, but we do have the mosquitoes. And we have Culex quinquefasciatus, which is also known as the southern house mosquito. They carry West Nile virus too. And then this pretty lady is the Aedes aegypti, and that's the one that we are very concerned about right now. It's also known as the yellow fever mosquito. They can vector yellow fever, Zika virus, dengue, and chikungunya. It's an invasive species. These are the ones that came to us through the shipping container full of lucky bamboo, which I brought a sample of lucky bamboo if you're not familiar with it and what it looks like. They opened up this shipping container and all these mosquitoes flew out, and they decided that they liked it here. So they're very invasive. They fill a niche that other mosquitoes don't fill. We've always told people, beware of mosquitoes at dusk and dawn. Well, the Aedes aegypti have a different ecology, and they're active during the day. They actually like to live indoors with us, and they like our blood because we have an amino acid called isoleucine that they need to lay their eggs. So they're really happy with us. They have very cryptic breeding sources. They can breed in as little as a bottle cap of water. Stuff that we walk by every day and we don't even notice, they could be breeding in pieces of trash. And their eggs are very, very hardy. They can withstand drying out, and then when new water comes in, like from a sprinkler or a summer rain, that egg can hatch and it can go on and breed new mosquitoes. So some of the diseases that these mosquitoes can bring: West Nile virus. 1 in 150 people infected with West Nile virus develop severe illness. Most of the time, we're asymptomatic. The symptoms can include high fever, headache, muscle weakness, vision loss, numbness, and paralysis. A lot of the symptoms of mosquito-borne illnesses are also flu-like. So sometimes we may not go to the doctor because we just assume that we have the flu. If you've been bitten by a mosquito or you're in a mosquito area and you develop you develop any of these symptoms, I would go to the doctor. I would get a blood test. I would say, hey, I might have been bitten by mosquitoes. The symptoms may last for several weeks, and the neurological effects can be permanent. Other mosquito-borne diseases, Zika virus. That can either be asymptomatic or you can have very mild symptoms of fever, rash, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, can last several days to a week. Reinfection is unlikely. These symptoms are kind of just like a lot of other diseases that we may have. Zika is important because that can cause microcephaly. If a pregnant woman is bitten by a mosquito that has Zika, that unborn baby can develop microcephaly, which is a smaller head. The head doesn't develop as it should. Dengue fever. That's also known as breakbone fever, because if you get that, you're miserable. That feels like you have every single bone in your body, every single joint hurts. It feels like everything's broken. Symptoms can last 2 to 7 days. Death doesn't always occur. You get over that dengue fever. Yellow fever, again, mild or asymptomatic. Yellow fever is kind of unusual because it's a very sudden onset of symptoms. Fever, chill, severe headache. And then the symptoms can last for a week. 1 out of 7 people can have these initial symptoms, and then all of a sudden they feel a lot better, and remission occurs. It can happen for a few hours, it can happen for a day, and then all of a sudden you're hit by a high fever, jaundice, bleeding, shock, and 30 to 60% of people who have these symptoms can die. Chikungunya, again, symptoms begin 3 to 7 days after you're bitten by a mosquito. You may forget that you were bitten by a mosquito. You may have not noticed that you were bitten by a mosquito, and then all of a sudden you have these symptoms: rash, fever, joint pain, headache. Death is very rare. And again, with other mosquito-borne illnesses, newborns, people with pre-existing health issues, and elderly are more at risk for severe disease. And then malaria is a complicated disease. We don't have that in this country. It was eradicated. We do have the mosquitoes that can carry it, but we don't have any locally transmitted cases that I know of. Symptoms of that are high fever, shaking, chills, flu-like illness. It's caused by a parasite, and the treatment for that is kind of complicated too. So the mosquito life cycle. The adult mosquito will lay her eggs in water. They have to have water to be able to breed. Their life cycle depends on water. So it's very, very important to tip and toss any water that you see around your yard or even in your house if you have plants that are sitting in water. So the eggs hatch into larvae. The larvae go through 3 to 4 stages called instars, where they molt and they grow bigger. And I've brought some friends with me too today that I will show you what mosquito larvae and pupae look like. Those instars grow up, and their whole mission in life, thank you, their whole mission in life is to eat. They're kind of like teenagers. That's all larvae do. They're like caterpillars. They eat and eat and eat and grow bigger so that they have the energy to spin a cocoon, in this case, pupate. And when they go into the pupation, they have enough energy to change into an adult mosquito. It's kind of cool to watch that. And then the adult mosquito emerges from the pupa case, and she dries her wings, and she sits on top of the water, and the whole cycle starts over again. So the easiest way to get rid of mosquitoes is to tip and toss the water that you see standing around. Get rid of water sources. And I'm going to go over some of the water sources that we may see in our yards. Mosquito imposters. These look like mosquitoes, but they're not. Crane flies are the big mosquito-looking bugs that you see in the springtime. They come out in April and May, and they fly around. They're real clumsy flyers. They kind of bumble around, and then they're gone. They're really good food for birds and for reptiles. And also midges. Midges are very small mosquito-like bugs too, but they don't have biting mouth parts. They're not going to bite us. So they're a good source for birds, and they're not vectors. So some of the things we can do at home. Tip and toss any standing water. If you've got buckets that are out in your yard that are getting filled up by your sprinklers, tip and toss, get rid of the water. Turn those buckets upside down, store them upside down. Fix your broken window screens, because the mosquitoes are going to come inside. They want to be inside with us. Some of those Aedes aegypti want to be indoors. They've got it made once they're inside with us. If you've got lucky bamboo, or if you're like me, you're a gardener and you like to start plants by leaves and rooting them in water, make sure that you're getting rid of the water, changing the water at least once a week. And if you've got saucers underneath your plants, tip out the water that's in there, because mosquitoes are going to use that as their breeding source. If you've got pools that are not maintained in your neighborhood, call us. We need to get right on those pools that are not maintained. And ponds too. Ponds have stagnant water. I would really suggest if you could have a water fountain in your pond to circulate the water, disrupt that water so that mosquitoes can't lay their eggs in that water. And then old tires. If you've got old tires in your yard, please get rid of them. Because once the water is in those old tires, you can't get the water out. I don't know if you've ever tried, but it's impossible. Unless you drill a hole in those tires, get rid of them. If you've got a boat and you've got a cover on your boat and it's sitting out there in the every once in a while we get a summer rain, or if it's in the sprinklers, that water can pool in the tarp and it can breed mosquitoes. I've seen that happen in planned communities that have lakes and ponds. They'll have boats out there for people to use, and that just breeds mosquitoes in those tarps that have water. Store your wheelbarrows upright. Those are a great container for breeding mosquitoes if they get wet. And like I said, store buckets upside down. Your gutters have a lot of debris in them, and when it rains, that water just stays in there, and it creates this wonderful breeding habitat for mosquitoes. If you have bird baths, scrub them out once a week. I have a story about that. I have many bird baths, and we were having a problem with mosquitoes in our yard, and I was walking by, and my husband just looked at me and said, "Some mosquito technician you are. Look at that. Look at that." I had mosquitoes breeding in my bird bath. I was horrified. So we scrub them out at least once a week. Empty plastic toys. If you've got kids that have toys out in the yard, they can hold water, and some of them just kind of get lost under shrubs and bushes, and I've seen that happen too. I had a lady call us up, and she was really angry at all of her neighbors because she had mosquitoes in her yard, but it was coming from the neighbors. So all we can do is do an inspection around her yard, and I found this toy truck full of water from the sprinklers that was pushed under the bushes, and it was full of mosquitoes. And I brought it out to her, and I said, "This is what we're looking for, and we need you to look for this too." And so we got rid of her source of mosquito breeding. We recommend to use insect repellent that has DEET in it, picaridin IR 3535, or oil of lemon eucalyptus. And those are the ingredients that you're going to find on the cans of repellent. It has to be used on your skin. It can't be just used on your clothes. It has to be used on your skin so that your body chemistry reacts with it, and it makes you smell yucky. Makes you smell yucky to mosquitoes. They want to leave you alone. Mosquitoes are attracted to our skin odor, and we're kind of yeasty smelling sometimes, so they're really attracted to your recycling. How'd she get there? So when you're drinking your water bottles, throwing your water bottles away, your beer cans away, there's still a little bit left in the bottom of that. And if you throw it in a container, and just leave it there and bring it to the recyclers maybe twice a month, whatever, that's a habitat that's going to breed mosquitoes. I've seen that happen. So the complaint response. When you call our office, if you've got an area that you want us to check, say you've got a pool that you want checked, you've got a roadside ditch, you've got a retention basin that you drive by and you see these tall grasses growing and you wonder if there's any mosquitoes coming from that area, call us. We have certain contracts with cities through the County of Riverside. Banning and Beaumont are two cities that we have contracts, so we may ask you to call your code enforcement office, and they in turn will call us and say, can you please check this out? And we go out and we respond within 2 days, usually within 1 day we're out there, and we follow that complaint through to the very end until it's all mitigated and taken care of. So part of our surveillance, we have different areas that we routinely monitor. These are called CO2 traps. And what it is dry ice is put into a paint bucket, almost like, and it's hung in a tree or a fence, and it has a motor with a net underneath. And it's going to capture mosquitoes that are attracted to the carbon dioxide because the carbon dioxide is off-gassed from the dry ice. And they're going to get stuck in our net. And so we put them out overnight, and then we collect them the next morning. And we identify them, and we send them to the state for testing of diseases. And this is some of our technicians doing some treatments. We are filling the pesticide container on the back of a truck. We're going to go out and spray. We have these machines called Mariamas. They're kind of like a leaf blower, but they can spray out a granular material or a liquid material, and we will take care of mosquitoes that way. We have ultra low volume aerosol fogging on the back of our trucks that we can drive through neighborhoods and spray for mosquitoes that way. And we also have another one called a Buffalo turbine that sprays out a heavier concentration of liquid. So these are our mosquito fish. We have a very small mosquito fish program at our office that we give out to people who want some fish that will eat mosquito larvae and pupa for their ponds or their horse troughs. These are very small fish from the guppy family. They're live bearers, so they don't lay eggs. You can go from 2 guppies to gallons of guppies with very, very shortly. They're surface feeders, so they're going to go up to the surface to eat whatever's hanging on the surface, like mosquito larvae and mosquito pupae. They are available at our office. We have to go out and collect them from the wild, so if we can have you call us to make sure that we have them in stock. I did bring some with me, so you can take a look at what they look like. We do ask that they're not released into streams or lakes because they are an invasive species. We only have them available for ponds. And there's our contact information. That's all of our technicians. The only one who's missing is our office assistant, Maria. She wasn't available on that day for that picture. But there's our website, there's my email, and our phone number. So we're available for questions if you would like.
Can we have the lights turned up?
I get bitten all the time. I must be a super attractive person. But one of my friends told me that if I eat bananas, that makes me even more attractive to mosquitoes. Is there any food that you eat that does cause that problem?
That's a really good question. A lot of those are wives' tales. It depends on our body chemistry. You've heard of the Aedes aegypti being called the ankle biters. These come after us. Yeah, they come after me too. They want to go after our ankles because our feet smell. I know, in a nutshell, it's true. It smells good to them. There's something that they can, that they identify as food. And so they come after us because of our body chemistry. And that's why the repellents that I had mentioned, they make us smell different to the mosquitoes, so they don't recognize us as a food source.
Yes, one of my concerns here in our community is that our storm drains, where there's accumulation of debris and then the runoff of the water, and the water is really not going into the drain. And that's one of my concerns in our community that we need to address.
That's a very good concern. I talked to somebody here in Sun Lakes a couple of weeks ago who stopped me when I was doing my source checks here, and they told me about those. The water is coming off of people's yards, and it's going into the gutter, and then it goes down into the storm drain, and then it goes under the roads, and it goes out to the pond that's off of Riviera. That is something that has to be taken care of by either a street sweeper or residents who can push the debris out of that gutter so that the water does what it's supposed to do and go into the storm drain. Would you like? Oh, there we go. This lady's gonna.
Excuse me. You said that you go. You said that you when you're spraying in a community, and you're spraying from the trucks. What are you spraying?
We have different chemicals. They're pyrethrin-based, and they only target mosquitoes. And when we do our spraying, we do it before dawn or after dark so that we're not spraying other insects like dragonflies or bees or something like that. So the chemical that we're using is something that only kills mosquitoes. It's not harmful to pets or us. We don't want to be standing there breathing it, but when it's going up into the air, it's being dispersed.
Hello. Thanks for coming. We have a huge, a lot of that gutter water you were talking about goes down behind our, what we call Gate 6 down here, and it looks like there's a stagnant pond right past that Gate 6. I don't know how far it goes, but it looks like the water's just kind of sitting there. Is that something that we should be concerned about or report or what?
That's something I can check. I'm coming out tomorrow to...
Dog park.
You have a dog park?
There's no dog, no.
Call it the dog.
Oh, I was going to say, wow, Sun Lakes has everything if you have a dog park.
Not yet.
Wow. That's something I can check. Is that at, is it Country Club Lane and Riviera?
Breckenridge and Wailea, there's a big drainage ditch that goes
Okay.
At the bottom of the hill, and it drains into the park.
Oh. Okay. I have checked that in the past. Sometimes it has water, sometimes it doesn't, but I will for sure check it. Sure.
I'd just like to clarify a little bit more about Drew Lowery. I'm sure many of you have attended the concerts that he's given here with his French horn, and he lives across the street from me. And his wife told me that he was bitten by a mosquito and he developed West Nile encephalitis. It hit him very hard and very fast. He was unconscious for about a week, maybe more. He has a breathing tube. They're thinking about putting something in his trachea and a feeding tube. Yesterday he opened his eyes and he was, after a week or more, he was able to track his wife's movements across the room, but he didn't move his head. He was able to move 2 fingers when they asked him to, and 2 toes. So we have hope that brain activity is starting, but there wasn't any brain activity, and they were thinking about what kind of care they were going to have to give him. My question is, this was across the street from us, and I'm afraid to go out and sit in our hot tub. And is there anything that we can do, since that was the encephalitis West Nile? Is there some, I mean, can you come and spray our street? I mean, would that help? I mean, I don't want to be afraid to go out.
Right. I hear you. I talked to my supervisor when Michelle had talked to me about that when I first came in, and he's going to look into it, and I'm going to come out and do a more thorough inspection tomorrow of the area. I have a CO2 trap I'm going to be setting out tonight. In order to protect yourself, the best thing to do is to get rid of any standing water and get your neighbors to get rid of any standing water, to get rid of the mosquitoes. Once they're already in the air and they're out there, it's really hard to get rid of them. We can't do it. It's impossible. So the best way to get rid of them is to get rid of any standing water that you can. You can use the repellents. You can use the mosquito repellents.
Question. The disease or virus she was just speaking about, is there a preventive shot you can take?
No. No, unfortunately not for people. They have a vaccine for horses, but they don't have it for us yet. I don't understand that. And West Nile virus has been around for 20 years. 20 years.
I have a question. Is there any type of repellent that we should not be using?
That's a really good question. Do you know of any, Dakota?
If it doesn't have the chemical that was listed, don't use it. Because a lot of companies will try to get you to buy it saying, this is organic, this is whatever. It doesn't work. It does not work. So yeah, if it's not got the chemicals that we listed today, like D, like. Can I have you repeat that? Because the people that are watching live won't. Right. Sorry. No problem. Hello? No, you're fine. So yeah, if it doesn't have the chemical that we listed already, there was 4, don't buy it. It's not going to work. It's basic. It's terrible to say, but truly, if it doesn't have DEET, it's not going to get rid of it. Doesn't have lemon eucalyptus, it ain't going to do it. You got to actually look at those chemicals because it has been tested and proven. A lot of, like, you'll see it on Instagram, social media, Facebook. They're going to say, oh, this new thing works great. It don't. I'm sorry. You want to buy what is going to work, and we listed those 4 up here today.
Okay, so Skin So Soft isn't going to work?
You know, that's kind of weird because it does work for some people and other people it doesn't.
Okay. Because it doesn't contain DEET.
Right.
And it doesn't contain I don't think it contains the eucalyptus
doesn't.
either. Okay.
It doesn't.
Can you use eucalyptus oil and make your own spray out of witch hazel and essential oils?
If it's the oil of eucalyptus, yes, you can.
Oh,
Yes, you
interesting.
can.
Okay.
And there are recipes on the internet about that. The four chemicals that I had listed before were DEET, oil of lemon eucalyptus, picaridin, and IR 3535.
What about those gadgets that is supposed to attract, like mosquitoes and flies? I think it gives off the CO2. Is there any that really work?
No. Not really. The mosquitoes are going after us because they're attracted to us. They're attracted to the carbon dioxide. And the things like what I had described are CO2 trap. They're attracted to that because of the carbon dioxide, and we can trap them in there. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Something like that?
Some kind of gadget, a gadget that you plug in and it has like a blue light and it's supposed to attract
Yes.
the mosquitoes or flies?
There's a small trap called a catchy. It's Katchy that you can get from Amazon. I think it's about $30. It's only about this big, and it's got a blue light, and it's got a little fan in it, and it's got a sticky pad at the very bottom. Those are great for catching mosquitoes in your house. They also catch every other bug that's flying around. True. I mean, if you've got, I tried it at my house, and yeah, it sucked in everything. And they're kind of expensive, the little sticky pads are. But if you've already got those mosquitoes, if you can get rid of the flying ones and then get rid of the larvae and the pupae by getting rid of the standing water, that's the best way to get rid of the mosquitoes.
A quick
We're going to
question.
take one more quick question. Oh, go ahead, and then you can have one more, because we've got another program that we've got to get to.
So the pond off Riviera, are you guys treating the pond?
The pond?
That off of Riviera?
Yes, I monitor that. On a regular basis. That has a lot of mosquito fish in it. Lots of mosquito fish. There's no vegetation around it, so I never see any mosquito larvae or pupa when I go down there. You also have very, very healthy coyote population around there too. Very big animals.
One thing that I do when I entertain in the backyard is I spray the cement underneath my table with a DEET type of repellent. Then I spray the back of the chairs with the DEET repellent, and I spray my tablecloth or placemats with the DEET repellent, and none of my friends ever get bitten.
Good.
Do you want to show?
Sure. This is the Lucky Bamboo plant that I wanted to show you. If you have this in your house, or if you raise this, I mean, I love these things. Everybody in my office has one because I love these things. Dump out the water at least once a week. If you can scrub out the pot, that's even better, but get rid of the water. If there's any mosquitoes that want to lay their eggs, they're going to do it in this because they love that. And then it's called Lucky Bamboo. It's a cane plant. And then these are the mosquitoes and the pupae that I brought in. I just went and collected them this morning. This is a rearing jar. I have the baby mosquitoes in the bottom, and they go through their stages, and then they fly up when they're adult mosquitoes. They fly up through this little tube that's in here, and they're in the very, very top. And then we can identify them, and we can send them to the state for testing. And then I brought in some mosquito fish. There's males and females. That's just what they look like. They're kind of plain Jane little fish, but they really, really do a job on mosquito larvae and pupa. If you want them in your pond or in your horse trough or anything that's not going to get released into rivers or lakes. Got one more?
We're not going to take any more questions, only because I've got another presenter, and he needs to get up here. So I would love to thank Andrea and Dakota, from Vector Control. And did you leave any cards in the back? You have those other, the pamphlets in the back. Okay, so there's lots of pamphlets in the back, so please go take some if you haven't already. And if you have any other questions, I guess they can call you if they have any questions. Okay. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm all itchy right now. So I would like to welcome Nate Smith. He is our Deputy Director of Public Works and City Engineer, and he's going to give us a great presentation. I think you might want to use this microphone.
Okay. Switch over the computer and see what's going to start. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me today. As Michelle mentioned, I am Nate Smith. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works and City Engineer for City of Banning. A couple things before I do start my presentation. I'm expecting an AC tech at my house, so if I get a phone call that they're on their way, I might excuse myself so I can let my wife know that they're going to be approaching. And I do have another meeting at 3:30, so I do have a timeline to be out here. I do want to go through the presentation relatively quickly, give enough information here so I have enough time to answer any questions that you guys may have. We are seeking a lot of community input, so anything you have to offer would be great. I have my contact information on there. We have also from the city, we have Marisol Lopez, our Economic Development Director. She's listening in as well. We'll make sure that we get any notes, comments, concerns, and we can pass it along to the appropriate person on our development team. So, thank you. I am here today to talk about our complete streets and downtown revitalization plan. We'll go through a little bit of the background and then into where we are with the project now. So the things that we've noticed as we've been working on this plan is we're asked two things generally right off the bat. One of them is, haven't we done this before for the city? And the second thing is, what is a complete street? You know, that's kind of the new component that we have on this. So as we look forward, a complete street is a way to utilize the right-of-way that we have, the streets that we have, to serve the broadest potential user base that we have. That would be pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles, delivery vehicles, Uber Eats if they're picking up at a restaurant, transit stops, all these kind of things. How do we best leverage the limited right-of-way that we have to serve all of these interests? We look at stormwater, mitigation on there, on how to capture that, using it to green the street. There's a whole lot of very competing different types of elements, and what we need to do for our city is find out what that right mix is on what is going to make the best complete street for us. There is no one set, this is a complete street, this is what they look like. They are very context and community specific. Let's see. The second thing is the downtown revitalization. Previous plans that we've had and that the city has worked on wanted to leverage a lot against redevelopment, so redevelopment agencies. The state took that tool away a number of years ago now, so that's not an option for the city anymore. So what we're looking at doing is identifying who's downtown, what's missing, what would be attractors, and what framework can we set up from the city's perspective to encourage private investment to meet the goals that we are trying to achieve. So the revitalization plans takes on a different look than it has in the past. So up to this point, and I'm going to probably run through this pretty quickly. We've done a lot of community engagement. We did engagement at our existing conditions, where we're trying to find out what do we currently have down there. We started this round of engagement on May 17th. We had a community outreach day. We talked at the chamber breakfast. We had presentations to the business owners that are downtown. We've had presentations to council, to planning commission. I've talked with individual business owners in the downtown area and various interests. When we did the presentation to council, the mayor asked at that point that we actually reach out more specifically to the western neighborhoods. That's going to be here in Atwell, to make sure that we are getting input and getting that message as wide as we can. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. Next. So for this, we did hire a team of consultants. This program was funded through a grant by Caltrans. So the city's obligation, financial obligation, is essentially my time and other staff's time that we're putting into this. The rest of the program is paid for through that grant that we did receive from Caltrans. The team that we hired is Alta Planning. They are looking at the land use and the complete streets. They do have another consultant that's working with them. They are from the Arroyo Group, and they are looking at the financial aspects and some of the redevelopment. Our consultant from the planning group was not able to make it today. I've done this presentation about a dozen times with him. He is going to chime in. I do have my team's open. I have a couple people that are listening in there as well. So when he's available, he'll jump in there. So when we are asking questions, again, for the microphone purpose for everybody here, it would be good if we have that so we can make sure that gets through. So we'll start with some project background. The vision as we're looking forward, what we're trying to do, we look to try to expand circulation options. As circulation has traditionally been viewed as cars. We're trying to look at that as more active uses, passive uses, vehicle uses, and bring a level of safety to any of those travel modes as we are enjoying downtown. Try to incorporate the streetscape, make the sidewalks potentially wider. Maybe there's some public benches, outdoor dining, various other aspects we may look at for that. Establish a framework for attracting new investment, and that's where a lot of the community input is going to come in on what is it that we want to see downtown, and where are people willing to spend money is what it comes down to at the end, right? And develop a community-supported vision and path to get there. This is a critical point. As we don't have redevelopment as an option to fund these things, competitive grants is where we're going to have to go. And if the community is behind a vision and behind a plan, and we do these outreach events and we have these discussions a lot, it makes my grant applications more competitive than potentially others in the state. So the downtown area is defined as essentially as the Ramsey corridor between 8th Street and Martin Street at the courthouse. It's limited to Hayes at the north. We have Livingston and the freeway on the south. That's the focus area that we are studying for this project. So one of the things that we looked at as to give the community an idea is some precedent imagery. So these are examples that have been pulled by the consultant for other downtowns on what may have made them attractive or what it may have made them successful. We're not looking to recreate Redlands. We're not looking to recreate Temecula. We're looking to build Banning. But the examples that they have in these other communities may help to inform what those decisions should be and what's going to be the best approach for our community. So you see some precedent imagery there as regarding a, kind of a successful downtown. And then we have precedent imagery for complete streets. So you'll notice, I think there's a button on here, yep. All right, so you'll notice that there's a focus on landscaping on some of these. We see here protection of more passive modes of transportation for pedestrians and for bicycles, better ADA access, limiting the amount of time that pedestrians are actually having to interface with traffic by narrowing the streets at crossings. And then, looking at how parking is managed throughout the corridor and how we make sure that we're not taking everything away, but, allowing for all the other uses as well. So, as we go through, there's benefits for all, the residents by usage, by new opportunities. For business owners, there's the chance for them to open a business and succeed. Expanding a tax base for the city. You know, as we make these investments in downtown, and as downtown becomes successful, it does benefit the community as a whole. So one of the first tasks that the consultant team did was to evaluate the existing conditions from a land use perspective, from a perspective of, you know, what types of businesses exist, and looking at our streetscape. There's always a concern with these plans on what's going to happen with parking. So there is, went too far. So there is a parking analysis that was done. Generally, right now, in downtown Banning, there is a surplus of parking. You know, there's a lot of parking lots that are very open or empty at a lot of times throughout the day. They looked at the street corridor itself. You know, those who are familiar with downtown know that the northern curb kind of jumps all over the place. The street is very irregular. While that's a challenge for drivers, it's an opportunity for a program like this. You know, there's potential for sidewalk expansions, parklets, you know, drop-off loading zones that we might be able to utilize within that space. So these exhibits indicate just kind of the work that went in determining what that existing condition is. And then we have the economic analysis. And there's a couple of interesting points on here. One of them being that, I forget what the number is, it's like 73% of the jobs that exist within the city, people commute into Banning to do. But 80% of the residents who live in Banning commute to jobs outside the city. So it's kind of this weird dynamic and weird mix. What it kind of indicates is that there is a need to develop other and new types of jobs, new job bases, and there is a population that is local that would be willing and able to work in those jobs. And then the downtown corridor splits into a few different components as we look at it. There's, the way we saw it, there was 4 distinct areas that we have within that downtown corridor. Area 1, that's roughly between 8th Street and 4th Street. That tends to be highway serving commercial. That's where, you know, Jack in the Box, IHOP, you know, those types of things that might be attractors from somebody on the freeway that are gonna come into that area. As we move closer between 4th Street and San Gorgonio, this is more the traditional downtown core, you know, where the movie theater is at, some of the shops that are down that way. The Civic Center, you know, having the government center with the courthouse, everything there, there's always a draw of people towards downtown, and it could be a great catalyst to get people to participate and come down to the area. And then item 4 was where the old San Gorgonio Inn was. That's a huge opportunity for the city as that redevelops to be an attraction as well, and to get people to visit or stay in the downtown region. So we kind of talked a little bit about some of the community events we've had to date. I think what's interesting is some of the key things that we found on previous rounds of surveys that we did. So I'm just going to jump to those. One of the questions we asked is, what would make you feel better or more likely to visit downtown? And the top answers are lighting and safer crosswalks. You know, those are the top 2 things that popped up on here. Lighting is something that we've seen and we've heard a lot of, you know, that there's concern for going to a late movie that the parking lot may not be adequately lit, and that the pathway in between may not be, you know, suitable or doesn't leave people feeling safe to utilize that business. You know, wider sidewalks kind of comes in 3rd place there, but this is kind of where the first round was. When we talked about which of the amenities people wanted, again, you know, we see that lighting, outdoor dining and lighting are the top 2 items there. You know, and those 2 kind of go hand in hand. Again, if restaurants are outdoors, they're going to be lit. If it's lit, you know, you have more benefits and that sense of safety that comes along with it. We also see greening and shade, which are kind of related to each other as well. You know, so as we walk downtown, you know, having somewhere, you know, especially this time of year, right? Something that where you're not feeling like you're going to get sunburnt walking the 5-minute walk between San Gorgonio and 4th Street. And we asked for types of businesses. The top choice that we saw that people had overwhelmingly is restaurants and cafes. You know, people are looking for an experience to be able to dine downtown. And the advantage when you have restaurants and such downtown, that maybe they'll visit the theater before or after, maybe they'll go to a bar, you know, before or after. You know, there's other social opportunities that may exist with that as well. We have heard a lot in the community about the need for a grocery store on the east side. But when we specifically were talking about the downtown area, that didn't seem to be as much of an issue for that particular zone. Doesn't mean it's not important there on the east side. It may not be what's important in the downtown study zone. And this was the most interesting question that we had, because this runs counter to what our consultants have generally run against in every other municipality. When we asked somebody, would you be willing to get rid of parking if it meant better opportunities for pedestrians and bicyclists? We have 61% of the respondents who agreed that yes, they would be. So, it kind of goes again to say, we have a surplus of parking downtown. So, how do we leverage those assets against each other to meet the goals of making a downtown more vibrant? All right, so I'm going to slow down here. We're going to go through a little bit more of the conceptual design. The task at hand was to come up with 3 different design alternatives. And if you can think of a triangle, right? We tried to find 3 things that were about as opposite from each other as they could be. The intent on this is not that we're going to look at any one of these and say, this is the vision, this is what we're going with. But as we develop the plan for what Banning is, it's going to be bits and pieces from each of the one, and we'll settle somewhere in that triangle on how to develop this plan. So we're going to have, as we go through, we'll talk about what the focus on each of these different concepts is, and then we have some imagery that's representative of what that may look like as an expression as we get into downtown. So we'll use the same imagery for all 3 scenarios. And as we get through this, I think that's where I might want to open up for some questions, because there'll be some questions here, and then potentially close out the presentation after that with what the next steps are. Okay? All right. So the 3 alternatives, the terms we came up with for them, we have the Spark, we have Park and Play, and we have Gradient. Each one serves different needs. So the Spark is looking to create a space or something downtown that is an attractor. The focus of downtown would be community. So it's not going to be pulling from a freeway. We're not going to be, everything else. The focus is to get the community and businesses that serve the community and the residents to live, work, play, shop downtown. So, as we go through that, we'll go through some of the specific expressions of what those are when we get into a little bit more detail. Park and Play takes a different look. Park and Play is saying, okay, how can we leverage the people who might be coming through Banning to either get into the mountains in Idlewild or heading out to the desert? What can we do to draw them off the freeway? What's the attraction there? And we know that we've got other competitors with, a shopping mall and a casino down the way just a little bit. So it has to be something that is not what Morongo has. It has to be something that's not what Beaumont is. But finding what that is to draw people to park, stay in downtown, and walk along the Ramsey corridor and spend time and money. And the last one is Gradient. So Gradient takes a look at wanting to create downtown as a vibrant live-work area. So, as we say, maybe there's, micro manufacturing or micro industrial, there's some, residential on top, trying to get people downtown that stay downtown that will be able to utilize the shops, the businesses, and everything happens there. So as you can see, as we talk about each of these things, the type of business and the type of investment that would want to go in there is different. And that's where finding out where the community is at is so important with this project. So we'll talk about the Spark. So the key moves on this, it's more of a traditional use downtown. It's more like what we see in, Midwest, a lot of other areas, a lot of other successful downtowns. Redlands, has a sharp downtown. I may refer to that. I grew up there, so spent a lot of time at Market Night. But they have the distinct kind of traditional downtown, and then they have the community event, which was Market Night, to draw people to use downtown. It creates places for community, but we don't want it to be stale. So we want to have opportunities for, they call it opportunities for discovery. And that's where we can look and say, okay, we have these alleyways and we have these cross paths that exist on there. How can we do that where somebody who visits downtown this month, the next time they go, and maybe they're visiting a new shop, there's a new something that they're able to discover. So that's what the major design moves are there. As we look, this is a representative image here. That is the alleyway that exists between the theater and back behind Jitters and where, I forget what the name of the brewery was that was out there, but that's kind of back in that area. So what we see is a little bit more traditional. There'll be some public seating, some public landscaping, but to give people an opportunity to move through there, to gather through there. The focus as we see this is kind of here at the intersection of Ramsey and First. First Street does provide, a good, kind of a good cross street as a focal point. It draws from the community center, it draws from 4th Street, and there's opportunity there as that is a very wide right-of-way. So more representative imagery, what we see here as far as the expression goes is a way to gather people downtown. So it's creating public spaces for food trucks, it's creating public, maybe performance areas, a place to gather for a market. It's not closing First Street, and it's not, saying that parking won't be there, but it allows it to be used for these types of activities when it's needed, and then it can revert back to, kind of open and parking for the times when we're not hosting an actual event. And then the view we have here, the intersection of San Gorgonio and Ramsey, looking down towards Jitter's Coffee Shop and the theater. The focus here, is about creating some green space, protecting bicyclists with like a separate bike lane, and then, enhancing kind of the crosswalks for awareness, maybe some bulb outs in there. I do want to note that, we chose something that looks cartoony, intentionally, because these are concepts to present an expression. Is not a design specifically that we're looking at. So as we look for what the inspirations on this was, the inspiration is creating open space. So there's the alley in Redlands that has the umbrellas on it, that has become kind of an Instagram point. We have, some other areas where maybe, a movie or an outdoor gathering or show or something is able to happen there. But the idea is to create some open spaces downtown that will be used to help to congregate people and bring them in that direction. From the land use perspective, we're looking at some mixed use building, residential units, multifamily, build some density downtown. Because again, as people live downtown, they're natural customers for the businesses that exist downtown. And here we can see kind of in green is more or less the alley system that exists that could be activated and enhanced to provide for pedestrian access separate from the street. So we're not really building the street corridor, we're building these kind of niches, if you will, where people are able to gather and, perform some of the things they want for outdoor dining, so on and so forth. So flipping the script a little bit, the other item that we look at is called Park and Play. So as I mentioned, this is trying to provide for some entertainment, something that's going to attract people from outside the community. Not that we're going to say that the local community is not participating, but we're really trying to draw somebody from the outside to pull off the freeway and spend some time here in Banning. It's a destination for visitors, and the concept here is creating a main street. So instead of looking at alleys, this looks more at saying, let's make Ramsey the overall through corridor that's going to be experienced. We have opportunities with some larger parking lots at 8th Street, where the old Alpha Beta was, and then across from the Civic Center. So you'll see that the expression here, it's a little bit more loud. If we're going to try to draw people from outside, it's going to be more vibrant. It's going to be probably a little more modern. Something that's going to capture somebody's attention as they're driving by it, 80 miles an hour, we're joking, right? On the freeway, and try to get them to pull off. So we see that expression that's a little bit louder through here. We see features that might be an attraction. If we're wanting people to visit from the outside, if they're posting on social media, it's always a benefit. So having something like that that's going to be the Instagram moment, if you will, is a component of it. The focus on the street here you see on First Street is still, there's passive uses for parking, the enhanced landscaping, but it is more transportation focused than it is community focused. And as we look here at the intersection of Ramsey and San Gorgonio, you can see how we have the loud presentations with some of the, more modern type artwork, modern type benches again, this is all representational. It's not what's going to get built out there. But something that's going to be that attraction, that's going to show up, that's going to trend, that's going to bring people into the community. As we look at the land uses for the open space, let's see, we got the Civic Center, the Civic Core, is really kind of utilizing the courthouse and the City Hall as a key attractor. Something that's vibrant, we got arched entries, lets you really know that this is the place. If you think of, I think Uptown Yucaipa now they've got a kind of a marquee over it. A lot of neighborhoods in San Diego do similar. My aunt used to live in Little Italy, and that's just back in the day before they started putting any money into it. It's an incredible place now. Land uses, we're trying to attract in maybe a hotel, a convention center, something that's going to draw some visitors out this direction, and some kind of themed attractor. We look at, Hadley's. People would drive forever to go to Hadley's. Not that we're going to bring Hadley's into Banning, but something that's going to be a regional draw. It's like, oh, I got to stop and get a date shake, And then we look at the land use on here for the corridor. Again, the focus for pedestrians is really along Ramsey Street. So we have maybe look at some park space, repurpose some of the area around City Hall, and some of the lot that's across the street. And maybe right next to the Boys and Girls Club, there's some open area there, and that's potentially something to look at as well. And then the last of the concepts we have is gradient. So as I mentioned, this is creating a much denser live-work type environment downtown. The focus on this is to soften and green it, to make it attractive for somebody to choose to live in. And to allow for small scale or custom production. Think of somebody who maybe customizes motorcycles. If we look at something along those lines, it's kind of allowed use, but if you're on Livingston Street, you're next to the freeway, it's a loud area. So there's some synergy that might happen there where if production's a little bit louder, it's not going to be as much of a nuisance to the community if we're already focusing that in a louder area. So the imagery that we see as we work through this, is greening, it's softening. It's really intended for the residents. If they don't necessarily, if they're living in mixed use or apartments, if they don't have, private spaces, they have spaces that are shaded, that are green, that are attractive, that they'd be able to gather with friends and neighbors at, outside within the public sphere. This is the greenest approach that we took. So the focus here really is on landscaping and softening up. So as we look at First Street as this option, it's a lot of planting material. It's a focus on wide sidewalks. It's a focus on creating, just a public arena where somebody would be able, to enjoy living downtown. And again, from San Gorgonio Ramsey, the expression there is green. It's shade. It's, making it that attractive place to choose to want to live. So we look at some of the different precedent imagery on this. I keep pointing at the wall. Community gardens, trails, green spaces, kind of lush landscaping, general greening. But the land use is what varies out here. Maybe there's somebody who's a small batch distiller and they would want, something back on Livingston Street. That could be an opportunity for that type of business that doesn't exist in the community now, and somebody to run it and live above their work area. Looking at affordable housing options for people who are entering into the job force that may not, moving out of mom and dad's house, may not be able to afford, their own place yet, giving them an opportunity in somewhere where they could afford a studio or one bedroom type of apartment. So as we look through the land use plan on here, it's, kind of general greening along the corridors, using some of these alleyways to build new connections. We had some talk about what, like the City Hall parking lot, for example, maybe that could be real small units for housing. It could be a multi-use space. So maybe we put green pavers or something on there. It can be used for parking during the day when we're working, but for community events at night. You know, there's a lot of different flexibility and options. But again, making downtown a choice to live, and then supporting the types of businesses that would exist if you are living downtown. There we go. And we looked at what are opportunity sites. So this again, you know, the old Alpha Beta where the county services is now, you know, it's an old grocery store, it's one large building and it's one large parking lot. We look at the Civic Center as a draw into downtown, and we look at the vacant old San Gorgonio Inn property as a potential draw for redevelopment. So we looked at these opportunities with the lens on what each of the different concepts was to kind of figure out what could go there from a massing perspective. You know, like how many units could we support, what types of uses could we support, how would we look at parking, so on and so forth. So these next are, they're very blocky diagrams just to understand the idea of what kind of structural massing may exist. So as you look at the Spark, you know, we can see that maybe the opportunity site is the San Gorgonio Inn property. You know, we're looking at multifamily housing. You know, that could be what the function is there. You know, be community focused, bring somebody in, they live downtown, they shop downtown, so on and so forth. As we look at the Park and Play, the idea there is to build some kind of hotel or conference center. You know, there's a component for multifamily housing, additional retail within that zone, but then that convention center that goes with it. That's going to be that draw for out-of-town visitors. We get them into the hotel downtown, and then we can push them off to a restaurant. And we can, you know, say, hey, go visit our movie theater that's right down here. And then the last one with the gradient looks at it from, you know, this kind of hotel kind of concept, artist housing, some residential, and then maybe some of these mixed use units, again, back against Livingston Street, where if they're noisy, we're not going to notice. You know, that's kind of the point of it there, but provide those opportunities. So it gives three different feels of what downtown could look like as we move through. So the next part of the presentation is kind of the next steps. I think I'd like to pause at this point, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have, you know, any insights that you have. You know, Marisol, can I help you? Marisol, can I help you with, have you write down some notes for me?
Got a couple questions about south of the freeway, getting to downtown Banning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have been in this area for almost 60 years. Banning used to be a nice little hustling and bustling little town in the 60s and 70s, but we lost a very large employer to whatever. Anyway, there's probably 15, 20,000 people that live south of the freeway. And most of us don't want to go through the gauntlet of Highland Springs and the freeway to get to downtown Banning. So we use the shopping center that's in Beaumont. Now, is there any plan to get us a corridor to the downtown Banning? Because I'm very partial to downtown Banning, being here as long as we have. So what I feel is we need a corridor, get that road put through to Westwood, and so that we can get to San Gorgonio. And another thing is, what are we doing about an anchor store to bring people into the downtown area? Thank you.
So that's a very good segue for something that just got posted on Facebook earlier today. You know, we did receive recently, very recently, we did receive a grant that's going to be a good amount of money. It's about $13.5 million that's going to kickstart the construction for the Sun Lakes Boulevard extension. So as we're finishing up plans on that, you know, that improvement is coming. You know, we're hoping to get everything wrapped up, and I would love to be in construction I'd love to be in construction in a year. It's probably more like 18 months. But, you know, we're really trying to move forward to make sure we have that corridor so that you don't have to deal with the gauntlet that is Highland Springs. You know, as far as the anchor store, that's something that Marisol is involved with very regularly. We've had a lot of meetings with, you know, potential developers we'd like to see about what the vision is for downtown Banning and encouraging them to make the investment into it. Having this plan will help us tremendously, because then we can go through and instead of leaving it open-ended, you know, it's like, what do you want to build? We can say, here's our vision for downtown, can you help us meet it? So, you know, as this plan wraps up, that's going to give us a lot of weight with a lot of the developers to really, hopefully, kickstart that negotiation to get somebody interested in investing into downtown Banning.
David Keeley's the name, and I've been very involved with the Boys and Girls Club downtown. You referred to it. A pocket park is possible in that land next door. The teen center is committed to managing that property. There's been a design of a pocket park that would be wonderful downtown. Homeless people downtown is a topic you haven't discussed, and it's really a serious problem. And that might be the fly in the ointment why that project hasn't moved forward. But that's a wonderful place for a pocket park that would really help the downtown area.
So you bring up the homeless. Yes, the homeless that we have downtown, it is a problem. It is a detraction. You know, people are not wanting to go and spend time downtown there if they feel that, you know, they're being watched over if it's unsavory. We acknowledge that, and it's something that, you know, we work with the business owners out there to try to address. We try to get police on there. We've been working with the county extensively. All that being said, I don't want what the homeless situation is today to be a draw on what our vision is for downtown. So, you know, as we're going through and creating what this vision is, as we create the investment, as people start moving downtown, shopping downtown, we start lighting downtown, that's also going to be something that's going to push the homeless population into potentially other corners. So it's a multi-pronged approach. It is something that has to be addressed and taken care of. But as we look at this vision and as we're getting comments back from you today, you know, we want to look at it as like, what can it be? And that's what we want to move towards.
I think the vagrant problem goes hand in hand with these beautiful thoughts, because they truly are wonderful. But I'm afraid to go to IHOP because there's a regular beggar right by the front door. I'm afraid to go to Walgreens because there's a regular clientele of people just waiting for you to donate to them. I'm nervous sometimes about going into Albertsons. So doing the lighting is a fantastic thing because quite often they tie in together. But when these things occur in broad daylight, that has to be part of your plan to say that we have made arrangements to help fight crime in this area. Because otherwise we tend to stay closer to home. But one thing I might suggest, what about a mastodon park? It would be different than the dinosaurs, but mastodons have been in this valley. And what a great thing for kids to climb on and do all kinds of things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll take note of that. You know, like I said, any kind of ideas we have, especially for these open spaces, attractions, I think that's really interesting. Thank you.
I'll just capitalize on what she said. I don't hear anything in the plan about increased law enforcement. Sidewalk officer from the good old days that mixed with the public and eluded atmosphere of safety is definitely, I think, has to come before any of that other stuff is going to happen.
So I will definitely take the concerns you had, and, you know, present that back with our police. I see Marisol furiously writing notes over there. But it is something that we acknowledge it needs to be addressed. We're not going to solve it as part of what this downtown visioning is. This really is a document to help us win the grant dollars to go through and make the improvements to the public spaces. As we're looking for implementation on this, my role and the city's role, you know, we're not going to be able to get in there. We're not going to be able to build a building. We're not going to be able to do these types of things. We're not going to be able to do necessarily a complete facade improvement. I need to work within the street and the right of way. And while we're working on trying to get on top of the homeless concerns now, you know, there's things that we can maybe take a look at on, you know, better organizing where the trash receptacles are, you know, and dumpsters for the businesses. You know, if there's less likely for them to be able to pick through something, there's less reason for them to want to be downtown. So, you know, there's some low-hanging fruit that we might be able to address as part of this plan, and we will take a look at that.
Is this presentation online?
Yes, so it's available, I'll see if I can get it with a direct link from the city's webpage. It is included as an attachment right now. We did it at the June 27th city council meeting. So if you're able to access that, find that item, it is there. But, Marisol, remind me when we get back, we'll talk to see if we can get a direct link to it on the city's webpage.
I was mentioning to Marisol that it would be nice to have a train station, because we have the tracks, and it would be nice to be able to connect, so that would encourage people to get off the train if there was something to get off for. Also, I just feel that, I think personally that your focus should be on things that can be done sooner rather than later, because you're looking at a population that is not looking forward to something that's going to be happening for the next 5 years or 10 years. So you have to be aware of who you're talking to.
Okay, thank you. The first speaker mentioned about bicycling and getting to downtown and bicycles, and some of your slides had bike racks shown there, and that is an issue. As one who bicycles and loves it, I don't want to put my bike on the car to go to a place where I can bicycle for 3 blocks. I mean, that isn't what I want to do, but I would ask on a different note that you are looking at other towns, and towns, thousands of them in our country since the 60s and 50s have had to reinvent downtown. I would ask that your committee look at what happened in downtown Burlington, Vermont, and up in the state of Washington at Linden. Linden has completely turned around their town with something that is immediate, cost-effective, and it changed the entire look of downtown, and it brought in business.
Okay.
So, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Oh, thank you. As a kind of a side note to that, as far as the bicycle infrastructure goes, another project that we are working on, again, it was grant funded. We are preparing an active transportation plan right now. That is community-wide. That is looking at creating bike lanes, bikeways, that are going to connect the entire community. We're at a point now, I'm not quite ready to look at presenting what the different options are. We're finalizing it, but that should be coming up here in the next couple of months. And again, we'll be doing kind of a road show and looking for community input on that. So we are working on an active transportation plan as well.
Even though we are sort of our own community, special type of community, I'm the elephant in the room because besides investors, how else are you planning on financing this? Because every one of us probably have some issue with assessments and other forms of financing.
Grants. Grants. So, that's going to be what it is. One of the things that we have that works in our advantage at the moment is we are considered by the state as a severely economically disadvantaged community. As such, we are able to leverage that in our grant applications. Oftentimes, when we are awarded grants, it waives the local match requirement. So the grant would be 100% funded by agencies, depending on what the grant program is. Other grants, maybe it's like 10, 15, 20%, whatever that might be. I want to take advantage of that as much as I can for as long as I can. As the community continues to develop, as Atwell develops, as Rancho San Gorgonio at some point starts to develop, the economic, the economic balance of this community starts to change. So we can take advantage of those grants now. That's what I would like to do, and they're slow is the problem. So by the time I get a grant application in, awarded, can get it designed, get the funded on it, it might be 2 years to run through a cycle on that. But I think that's probably the best way that we're able to make the initial investments. And then as downtown starts to redevelop, as we start getting greater revenues in, as we start getting more businesses to generate sales tax, that can help to kind of feed back into itself.
You have 3 proposals out there.
Yes.
How is that going to be decided? Will the residents of Banning have a vote in that? And
So
which
we
one
have
is
had
gonna-
an open survey, but I would love to hear what you have to think.
Me personally, I would just love to see, Okay, I've never used one of these before. I personally, my husband and I have talked about this over and over, how we would just love to see, like, more restaurants that are more inviting, outdoor activities, more outdoor cafes. So where you could go, we have beautiful weather here. I grew up back east. We have 3 months of like pleasant weather, unlike here, to really take advantage of something like that. And then just piggybacking on your bike riding, I lived in Memphis, Tennessee for like 12 years, and they did what was called a green line that actually went along the railroad tracks. Walking, biking, and it really took off. It was just totally beautiful and amazing. So that's also something to think about.
No, it is. And while I was up at school, up in San Luis Obispo, they did the same thing. So along the railroad tracks there, they've got a nice community trail. It took them about, I think it was 15 years to get permission from the railroad to take over the 15 feet that they needed. So, you know, as we kind of develop this plan, that's something that we can start making that conversation, but the railroads are very, very protective of their right-of-ways, especially if we're dealing with a transcontinental route. So, you know, it's something that is on my mind. It's something I've thought about, not just here. I live in Beaumont. That's something I thought about the way there to connect the region together. Would like to see it, so.
Yes, I have a question and a comment. And my question to you is, what is the timeline? Up until when do you need to have this completed? And then from there on, how long before it starts happening? And when is the completion, or more or less completion date of the overall renewal? One of my visions would be to start now rather than later, while all this takes place, because that's going to be years in the making, to renew the Stagecoach city that once was, not to look back, but to look forward on this vision, since this is one of our legacies here in Banning. And to renew that would be to have a mural right on the Banning donut shop right there on 6th Street and Ramsey. There's also a little house that it looks like a historical building, and behind there is Help. And then there's this land for sale right next door, a very small lot that nothing can be put in place. I think that it should be offered for parking for the, whether it's Help or for those buildings next doors, because there is a lack of parking in that area, and to have lots of trees and to have a lot of cleaning up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as far as your questions on next steps, I will be getting into all of that after we get through this round of questions here. So I will answer those for
We're
you.
taking one more question, that's it, because Nate needs to finish his presentation and he needs to skedaddle.
So this is more feedback. First of all, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I think this is really exciting. I'm new to this area. We've moved to Sun Lakes in the last year, and I gotta say, most people, when we say we moved to Banning, they say, why? Unfortunately, the area is not very desirable. I've been like, oh, I want to get to know what's in Banning, but as we drive around, there's nothing attracting me anywhere, and we're going to have all kinds of people come see us, and I want to take them someplace. And so having, you know, little shops to look at and restaurants and stuff, but just the aesthetic appeal, I think, unfortunately, I think it's unrealistic to think that people are going to get off the freeway to come see us. I think if we enhance, we really do have a lot of people around here, and I think they'll come out if there's something attracting. But the other thing I want to mention is, right now I still work full-time. I teach on the college level. Young professionals cannot afford to live anywhere near here. Over and over, I hear people graduating from college, they've got good salaries going on, and they can't afford housing. And so anything out here, we're a little more affordable. That's one of the reasons I'm here. But if we can attract the young professional and give them housing, they will stay, they will have families, and then they'll buy homes.
No, I agree. I bought in Beaumont in 2007 for those same things. You know, I mean, the city was starting to grow at that point, it was attractive. You know, if you look at my street, it's a lot of young professionals. What we're seeing at the Atwell community is we're starting to see where, you know, maybe they're a little bit priced out of Beaumont, they're buying an Atwell. And, you know, the hope is that as Rancho San Gorgonio starts, it's that same thing, that we start drawing in, you know, kind of the professional class, you know, that's looking for a place to stay, that they can raise their family, you know, and then, you know, kind of creating, again, framework downtown, you know, as we look at some of the multifamily on there, is creating spaces for everybody who works within the community and lives within the community. So it's not always just about, you know, the single-family house. It's sometimes, a lot of times, about the, you know, the other units there as well. But no, I agree, and that having people come through, being able to advertise that, that's going to start changing it. You know, the people I've spoken to on occasion out in Atwell, they love the community there. You know, they're happy to be there. And I think the attitude of, you know, why Banning? You know, eventually that's going to start to turn.
Go ahead, Nate. We're going to
Okay.
let you finish.
All right. So, next steps. City stakeholder discussion. I'll leave a couple of cards. I don't have enough, unfortunately. I only got like 3 or 4 with me. But I'll leave some back there. Please feel free to email me any comments that you have on the presentation. We did have a survey that was online. It did close. We are looking to see if we can reopen that. And if that's the case, I'll work through Michelle to make sure that we get information back out to everybody here, if you hadn't participated with the survey already, to be able to do so. The next step is trying to find what our preferred concept is. So as we look at that survey and what the images that people liked, didn't like, so on and so forth, that helps to kind of hone in between the 3 different concepts on what that plan is. You know, it's going to be some combination thereof. That will, again, be presented back to the community for final decisions, probably in the late fall. Here we have, this is the contact information for our consultant at Alta Planning. His name is Tim Bevins. If you want to email him directly, Michelle, I'll also get you that information. I'll make sure that ends up in your newsletters as well. You can email him directly also. He would love to hear specifics. You know, he'd love to hear things like, I don't want wide sidewalks, I want a transit lane. You know, the more specific the type of direction, the better we are at getting a plan that's going to work. I'll just grab that picture real quick. And it's weird how now it switched to full screen when it wasn't before. Okay. So, for my role, as for what we're doing next on here, we want to know specifically who should downtown serve. You know, we heard focus on the community. We heard, you know, focus on, you know, greening, making it more attractive. You know, that's the type of input that we're really looking to see on this, so that we can create a plan that's going to work for all members of the community. One thing that was brought up, we did have some discussions earlier, was I think it was with you, Michelle, about you have a shuttle that you're looking at trying to run downtown, of having a spot where that shuttle might be able to stop on the Ramsey corridor that's going to be convenient for people to, you know, load and unload into that zone and be able to enjoy downtown. What do you like? What don't you like? You know, we tried to come up with 3 different points, almost to push people into, I really don't like that. Because we can glean more responses from people from things they don't want to see than often we can from what we do want to see. So, you know, don't be afraid to be critical of what we have up there as the options as well, because that helps, again, us to refine and come in with something that's going to be, you know, the best plan for the community at the end of the day. And again, I'll reiterate this again, we don't want to be anywhere else, we want to be Banning. I forgot I had that there. So the online survey's closed, but talk to everybody you can. You know, we want to get as much input as possible on this. You know, I have another community that we're going to need to do another community presentation for Atwell. I think their next HOA meeting is September. So we're looking to probably reopen that survey through that time period to get people engaged with it. I need to just talk with the design group to make sure that we're all on board with that and they're good to go, as it does delay a little bit from what my implementation schedule is, to make sure we get all that on there. But talk to your neighbors. The more responses we get, the better. You know, we had, I think 300 or 400 responses on the first one. I'd like to get more than that. For the active transportation plan, SCAG told us they needed 300, and we struggled to get up to 75. The more we get, the better. If I can go to a grant presentation and say that we've had, 8% of the community participate in this, that's a big number. It doesn't sound like a big number, but as far as people actually engaging, that's a big number in the community of people to engage. So the more input we have, the more competitive I can be, the quicker I can get money, and the quicker I can get something actually constructed. Let's see. Pennsylvania is all city of Beaumont. But the grants are, to be candid, the disadvantaged community designation that we had was helpful in us being able to secure that grant for the Sun Lakes extension. Let's see. So as we look through this, the final report, this is likely, everything's going to bump back a quarter essentially. So as we're looking at completing the final report, we're still working on some of this community outreach, make sure we get everybody on the western side of the community as well. This is likely going to be fall now. Everything that's in fall is likely going to get pushed to winter as far as presenting a final plan to council for adoption, and then I am at that point off to the races. I'd like to create a spot where everybody is able to enjoy it much sooner rather than later. I completely agree with the sentiment here to get something done quickly. I feel the same way. I'm in my 40s. I still like to call my parents and brag about something that I worked on that actually got built. So. Okay. So I will, so June 23rd, this was the presentation to council. July 3rd was where our survey ended. We were looking for additional community input. Summer now is continued community outreach, and then compile their final report. Like I said, this is now going to push to fall. As we look into the fall, it's going to be presented to Planning Commission and Council, adopt report, and start seeking funding. And then 2024, the last year, I have implement plan and enjoy. And that's my presentation.
If everybody would like to write that down, I will have that information in the community awareness section. So Nate, I have all of his information, and I'll make sure that I get it out to everybody else. If you have any questions, you can email him preferably. That's why his phone number is not on there.
The best way to get a hold of me to make sure it's documented for sure is definitely email.
Okay, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate the presentation. So just a quick couple of other little things here. So you got both of our what we did now, and I wanted to let you know, Anita Worthen from Four Seasons has given me this, and it's information and resource fair. It's free to everyone, and it's open to everyone. Veterans, military dependents, family members, friends, and the general public. It is Saturday, August 12th from 9 to 12 o'clock, and is at the Oak Valley Parkway. Oh, I didn't want to say that. It is at the Albert Chatney Community Center. That's where it's actually at. And it is again on August 12th from 9 to 12 o'clock, and it's open to everybody. And then our next presentation is going to be on Tuesday, September 5th. And the reason I didn't have Mike Romero say too much about the fire is because he's going to be doing a presentation for me, and it's going to be Candace Jenkins from EPAP and Steve Neese from EPAP Animal Rescue, the City of Banning First Responders, Michael Romero, Banning Police Department, and Riverside County EMD. So we'll give you an update on everything that happened, things that we want to happen, things that we don't want to happen anymore. So that is our next presentation. So I thank everybody for coming and staying as long as you did. Thank you.